Hi, everybody. Today is Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025, and our dear friend, Laith Marouf, is back with us. Welcome back, Laith.
Great to be with you, Nima. Thank you.
Laith, you've been out filming and preparing the videos, footages from what's going on in the southern part of Lebanon. What was the main goal of that? What are you doing, and where are you gonna publish that? I assume that you're gonna publish them on Free Palestine TV. Go ahead and let us know about that.
Yes, we wanted to record documentaries about the new occupation posts, the areas that the Israelis extended into Lebanon. And, there is 5 new posts that are encroaching into Lebanese territory. And this is the declared ones. But also there's 12 points that are occupied prior to the war starting in 2023 that Hezbollah was trying to liberate before that. And so it's a lot of work, and we had to go, of course, to dangerous zones in the frontline villages, and we couldn't film it all in one day. So we filmed today the frontline villages and these new Israeli posts from the Naqoura on the coast all the way to Ait al-Shab, which is like halfway through in the border with occupied Palestine. And we entered some villages that we haven't before entered throughout this war, and we got permits this time to go in. And we had with us a correspondence, a war correspondence for Al Manar television, who helped explain things. And the amount of destruction that we saw in these villages, I mean, you think you would get used to it, seeing all the other villages that we've already been to, but it now clearly feels that the Israelis, and with the Americans behind them, are trying to empty the villages in the front lines. And, a few months ago, there was still residents in these villages, but the Israelis keep on attacking. And the government of Lebanon is not doing its job, either rebuilding the electricity or the water infrastructure, or even providing military defense for these people. The Lebanese military is staying away from even these villages. We didn't see any Lebanese posts inside villages. They're all out. So it's clearly they have almost abandoned these villages to the Israelis. So this situation is pretty intense. And hopefully the first part of the documentary, it's going to be 2 parts so we don't overwhelm the audience, will be coming out in the next few days. And on our way back, we were driving, and there was an attack near us, halfway between Sur and Saida in the south on the coast. And we went to the scene of the attack, and this was an attack by a fighter jet with huge missiles, which hasn't happened since the ceasefire, quote unquote. So we got to the scene. It's an industrial zone, and there's a lot of shops like woodworkers and metal workers and so forth. And the explosion was so huge that these buildings, parts of them, flew up the hill to the road that we were filming from. As we're walking around, there was a lot of metal sheeting that's like the roofings on the side of the road. And then we noticed that there was a man under, and he was a martyr. He got thrown around 600 meters away from the explosion site, a worker in one of these shops, and there was 2 injured civilians. The villagers were very angry. You could see they were really angry at what had happened. We interviewed some of them. The language that they were using was, I think, beyond anything that we've heard in all of our 2 years from the people on the ground. People were angry openly at the government and the military for failing them, and saying that they will not give up their weapons and they will defend their land, whether it's against the government of Lebanon and the army of Lebanon, or against the Israelis and the Americans. These were very high sentiments that we didn't hear before. So it was a very long, day, 12 hours of work in the field, and it's all of these reports that we recorded will come out on our website, freepalestine.video, and people can find us on all the social media at Free Palestine TV on YouTube, Rumble, and X and Instagram. So hopefully we can convey the words of the people to the rest of the world, and the images of the realities. I think most people don't understand how destroyed the south of Lebanon is, the frontline villages. It's like scenes from Gaza, and it's accessible for people to come. It's really disappointing to see how the international media that is saying, oh, we're not able to cover what's happening in Gaza because the Israelis are not letting us. But in reality, they have access to Lebanon and the south of Lebanon, and they're not coming anyways. It's an excuse that they're saying they can't enter Gaza because Israel doesn't allow them to. Me as a journalist here in Lebanon, Israel is not, I don't need the permission of Israel to go anywhere I want to. And in fact, I ended up in jail for 3 days here in Lebanon because I didn't care also whether the Lebanese government wants to give me a permission or not to go, because that's my duty. I have to go and show the audience, the world, what's happening on the ground. And if the Lebanese government wants to give me a permission or not, that shouldn't stop me. And so international journalists could go into Gaza, whether the Israelis like it or not, if they actually know their duty and they are truthful about what they're doing, and they're not doing it just for money and fame and a job at BBC or Associated Press. If they really believe in the message of journalism and reporting, which is to be the surrogate of the audience and to bring the truth and the reality to those who can't come to the ground like we do. So I hope our work is making a difference in the understanding of the audience in the world.
Laith, we had yesterday or the day before, we had Hezbollah informing the Lebanese authorities that if the current hostile positions against the party are maintained, it will have a negative effect on the parties' cooperation regarding the implementation of the ceasefire agreement. What is the communication? What is the nature of the communication that is happening between the two, the government and Hezbollah? And why is Hezbollah feeling that way?
Well, Hezbollah has 2 ministers in the cabinet, and its allies, its immediate ally, Amal Movement, has another 2 ministers, and there's other ministers that are part of the block of support for the resistance. So they have a direct to what is happening in the government. The military now, which is now supposed to be planning the action of disarming Hezbollah or other resistance groups in the country. Inside the military, for sure, at least 40% of the generals are Shia, and therefore, of course, Hezbollah knows what's happening inside the military. And knowing these facts, this is why Hezbollah makes a statement like this, because it knows that the military will not be facing Hezbollah, will not carry arms against Lebanese citizens. And given that there's now even a bigger coalition of support for the resistance, since 2 weeks ago, there was a new front organized with the Syrian Social Nationalist Party and other Arab patriotic parties and local Lebanese liberation movements, all forming a front with Hezbollah and Amal. It's clear that Hezbollah knows that the wide sentiment in Lebanon, not only after watching the genocide in Gaza or going through the mass destruction of Christian, Druze, Sunni, and Shia villages, not only Shia or neighborhoods, and also after watching the genocide of minorities in Syria at the hands of the HTS and the Wahhabi death squads with it, there's no way that the Lebanese public, we can say for sure, over 85%, if not 90% of the public is against the disarmament of Hezbollah. So all of these things gave Hezbollah's position a backbone, a strength, that it can speak in a higher voice to the government and is assured that it will win in any confrontation with this government that now has no military force to implement its objectives that are drawn up in Washington and Tel Aviv, and that the street in Lebanon will rise up if such a situation is enforced or attempted to be enforced by the government. So the statement by Hezbollah is now sets a new standard of where we're going. And the fact that Hezbollah also threatened to end the coordination south of the Litani River with the military and the government, this means that Hezbollah is threatening to return into full military activities in the south of the Litani if the government, goes over the will of the people and the will of the military itself that is at this moment incapable of defending the country.
Laith, politically, how is the situation of Hezbollah, and how do they have the leverage when it comes politically? I'm not talking about militarily.
Yes, they have the leverage politically. We heard the Nabih Berri, the president of the Amal party, and he's also the spokesperson or the chairperson of the parliament. He, in a statement, said that the red line is the Taif agreement. And the Taif agreement, if our viewers don't know what it is, it's the agreement signed by all the political parties in Lebanon at the end of the civil war in 1990, with the guarantees of, at that time, the Syrian government and the Saudi kingdom. And part of this is that any national relevant decisions have to be done by consensus between the sects in the country. So, Hezbollah and Amal are representing at least 40% of the population. And this is the lowest estimate of what is the Shia population in Lebanon. And so to attempt to make decisions that are national interest, that will set the direction of the country without the consensus of this community, then there will be unconstitutional, the government. The other thing is that if Hezbollah and Amal and their allies pull out their ministers from the government, first, as a first step, not going to the sessions, as has happened right now, that means the government cannot convene a cabinet meeting with the quorum, which is 51% have to be there. 2/3 of the cabinet have to be there for any national security vote. So there will be no votes taken, and the government will be paralyzed, right? And then every ministry becomes an island of itself and deciding on its own without prime minister interference. So this is now a clear beginnings of a collapse of the government of Nawaf Salam, the prime minister. The next step, if this continues, is the resignations of the ministers, which will collapse permanently the government of Nawaf Salam, and we will be back into a vacuum of no prime minister in power, and then things will fall down to the other two presidents posts, the president of the parliament, Nabih Berri, and the president of the country, General Joseph Aoun. And that means that the actual driving force behind the American and Israeli plan, Nawaf Salam, will be out of the picture. And it's impossible for Joseph Aoun, who is a general, ex-general, and representative of the Christian community in this trilogy of, the three posts have to be given by sect. The president is Christian, the prime minister is Sunni, the speaker of the house is Shia. This triangle of power, because also Joseph Aoun is from the south, and his own village has been attacked, a Christian village in the south. Those all guarantee us that if the collapse of Nawaf Salam's government happens, that the whole train that the Americans put on the track to end with a disarmament of Hezbollah is going to collapse. And then we will see what happens. I think Hezbollah even has a plan for a replacement for Nawaf Salam already in the work.
Laith, one of the important events that has happened in the recent days was the attack on Yemen. And Israelis attacked the prime minister together with the cabinet members. They were assassinated by Israelis. How important is that to make some sort of problem to what Houthis are doing? Was there any sort of a strategic mindset behind it?
Look, this is the first time the Israelis openly kill a government representative of this height and caliber. We can maybe argue, of course, that they assassinated President Raisi of Iran, but they didn't admit it. Here they are bragging about the assassination of the president, prime minister of the country, and his civilian ministers. This was a regular scheduled cabinet meeting at the official prime minister's offices with the civilian ministers, Minister of Justice, Minister of Education, Minister of, none of them are ministers that are of security cabinet caliber. There's not the Minister of Defense or Minister of Intelligence or what have you. And there was no generals or military in the room. So this was not a great success, number one, because it's an open meeting that everybody knows about. And it takes us into a new territory. We're watching for the last 2 years the international law mechanisms and the United Nations mechanisms that were created after World War II all collapsing. This is another one of those. This now means that it is legal, or not legal, is normal for countries to assassinate leaders of other countries. Okay. And so, I expect, of course, and this is what's happening right now, is that Yemen will retaliate in kind. The other thing that we should, clearly it indicates that this will not affect Yemen's abilities, is that, again, none of those killed in that room, martyred, were part of the military or security structures of the country. And Yemen already responded, beginnings of its response, and it said it will be targeting the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his cabinet members. It will also be targeting now official government offices, and that's what it did. They fired multiple hypersonic missiles that have multiple heads, and they hit the Ministry of Defense of the Zionists, and they hit the general command of the Israeli military, and they hit the official residences of the president and the prime minister. Not the ones that they're in actually now, but they're their official declared ones. So this shows you that Yemen now is capable of doing this, and the Israelis, because of their failures militarily, we see this repeating always with Israel. When it fails militarily, what it does is it wants to kill easy targets that have a big media, clout once that kill happens, as happened with, in this case, the prime minister of Yemen. And so, when we look at, are the Israelis capable of doing anything more than they have already done in the last 2 years? Is it that Yemen's capabilities are going down? No, we see Yemen's capabilities going up. So this is going to actually backfire on Israel, just like the attacks on Yemen's electricity grid and its ports is backfiring. We see that now Yemen wants to target the ports on the Mediterranean. We also see that Yemen is now targeting more and more Israeli ships, even at the north end of the Red Sea. That's what happened. These are Israeli ships that are going from the Suez Canal to trade with the Saudis, by the way. An Israeli ship that was in the Yanbu port of Israel, of Saudi, Israel, same thing. That basically Yanbu is where the Saudi oil gets pumped out on the Red Sea. And this Israeli ship, owned by the richest Israeli, was loaded with Saudi oil, heading back to the colony near the Suez Canal when it was hit. This is very relevant because it shows that this is not only a warning to the Israelis, this is actually a warning to the Saudis, who are continuing to fund and give oil and gas to the Israelis throughout this genocide and these wars.
Actually, we had in the news that Houthis attacked the Yemenis attacked the tankers, Israeli tankers, and today we learned that they're using the advanced missiles and hypersonic missiles together with and they fired a ballistic missile as well. I don't see Yemen just backing down on what they're doing. Here is how do you see the situation in the Middle East? We've seen protests in Bahrain. People are coming out against Israel, protesting. Do you think that somehow that would be contagious? That would somehow grow in the Middle East?
You know, the people of Bahrain are very noble. They are living oppression for same length as the Palestinians. The royal quote-unquote family in Bahrain is imported from Saudi and imposed on the indigenous people by the British occupation, which created the fabrication of Bahrain in the 1970s. It didn't exist before. It was an island with 40,000 indigenous people. Imagine that, with one of the biggest gas and oil reserves in the world, and it was chopped up so to kind of because there was all these Arab revolts happening, you know, in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s all across the Arabic world, and to make it look like that there's going to be now the occupation by the British is leaving. And so to see the Bahraini people after 80 years of this still coming out to the street, it puts to shame a lot of the other Arabic nations who are also living terrible conditions of oppression under collaborating elites and appointed presidents like Sisi, and what's happening in Yemen, and all these kings and queens that are appointed by the West. So But so yeah, Bahrain is always an inspiration to a lot of the people in the region because of this conditions. Bahrain is also occupied. It has the largest American naval base in Asia and Africa, and so this is a an honor for the Bahrainis to be under all these conditions still coming out to demonstrate. The region is on the edge because, as we see, the genocide continues in Gaza. As we see also, the Israelis are unable to have any of their military objectives come to fact. They've failed every part of this war since October 7th, and they haven't beaten one enemy yet. So what is happening is that this raises the possibilities that the Israelis do something crazy again in order to, in hopes of them having another a win, and which means that another front is going to be reopened, and either there will be an attack on Lebanon, which is one of the most possible. I think it's the highest possibility that there will be a reignition of the war in Lebanon, especially with the talk of Barak and Lindsey Graham and Trump about taking 8 kilometers deep part of South Lebanon and turning it into a resort and industrial area. So it's very possible that we'll be back at war very soon. Not even at the end of the month is a big possibility. By the end of September, we'll already be in war in Lebanon. And there's a smaller possibility of return of hostilities with Iran. And I think that's much smaller, the possibility, because the cost was so high on the Israelis. And the Americans did their best last time to come to the aid of the Israelis when they were getting a whipping. And I don't think the United States can afford to redo that and come to the defense of the Zionists in a war with Iran. And Iran this time will not be the same, will not retaliate in the same ways. And it's going to be much more painful for the Israelis to do so. So the biggest possibility is a reignition of a war with Lebanon, because the Israelis will be failing miserably in Gaza beyond genocide. They will not be achieving any of their military aims.
Laith, when it comes to the Palestinian Authority, what's the problem? Because they have been somehow helping Israelis, cooperating with them. And right now, you see in the United States, they're talking about they're not going to issue visas for them. And Israeli, we've learned today that Israeli Defense Minister Katz has instructed the IDF to prepare a military plan against Palestinian Authority. What's going on in the West Bank that even these people are somehow are seen as a threat to Israel?
You see, this is what always happens to the house slave when there's no more field slaves to beat up, right? The only role of a house slave is to keep the field slave in check. When master says that that field slave is bad, go beat him, he beats him for him. Okay. Don't give him food, he doesn't give him food. So once you kill all the field slaves, meaning, let's say, as they have happened over the last 23 months, there's been hundreds of Palestinian resistance members that were killed in the West Bank. Huge mass destruction in all the refugee camps outside the main cities of Jenin, Tul Karim, Beit Lahem, and all of those. Okay, so at this moment, the Israelis see that there's practically zero resistance in the West Bank. So why do they need the Palestinian Authority, whose job was to spy on the resistance in the West Bank and point them out for the Israelis to kill? There's none more. So this is the end of the house slave, Mahmoud Abbas, because he's so stupid, even as a collaborator with the Zionists, he's so stupid that he helped them get rid of all of their enemies in the West Bank. okay, and couldn't calculate that this means the end of him. There's no service he can provide. There's a reoccupation of every Palestinian city in the West Bank. There's thousands upon thousands of trees being uprooted every day. There's whole villages that have been depopulated. We're talking about now close to 25, 26 villages that have been totally depopulated in the West Bank. So there's no need anymore for the Palestinian Authority and its security forces that were trained by the Americans and the Israelis to do the work. They're done. There's no need for them. They shouldn't exist in the mind of the Israeli. He's just wasting money on them, right? And so this is the same thing of what happened to them trying to go to the Mahmoud Abbas and his cabal to go to the United Nations General Assembly that happens in September, and Trump banning them from having visas to enter, which is a violation, by the way, of the United Nations Charter. As the country that hosts the United Nations, it can't block leaders from coming to the General Assembly. And it shows you also the caliber, the difference between the caliber of Mahmoud Abbas and the late martyred Arafat, who when he was blocked by the United States from entering New York for the General Assembly, the General Assembly of the United Nations voted to move to Vienna to host its assembly there because the United States was violating the new UN Charter. Today, there's nobody to come to the aid of Mahmoud Abbas. Even his handlers and the ones that spend money on him, the Saudis and others, are not pushing the UN to move its General Assembly somewhere else, and or are not pushing the United States to allow Mahmoud Abbas to come to New York. So this is expected of an end for a collaborator is always humiliation by their master.
We had Israeli officials that they have unveiled a plan to annex 82% of the West Bank. And the reaction coming from UAE is somehow amazing that they're talking about that if they go in that direction, the annexation plan is a red line for Abraham Accords. What is that Abraham Accords? Who are they talking behind the scene about Abraham Accords while we're witnessing the genocide in Gaza?
Yeah, clearly, it's important to differentiate between the talk that is made for public consumption by, these puppet regimes, Emirates, Saudi, Qatar, Bahrain, Turkey, Jordan, Egypt, even, and the reality of their actions, right? And this is a margin of kind of independence in speech that has been allowed to these regimes by the Zionists and the Americans, British, and French before. Go ahead and claim that you're angry about the killing or the annexing of land, but behind the door, they're making all the business. There's, Israel wouldn't exist right now if the Emirates, the Saudis, and the Jordanians, they don't have the supply route to replace the Red Sea that they have been giving to the Israelis since Yemen formulated the blockade on the Zionists, and or if the shipping from Turkey and Egypt stops. The vast majority of products coming into Israel are coming through ships coming from Egyptian ports and Turkish ports. So, Erdogan blabs, but he's really just hiding the fact that he is doing this work. And similarly with the Emiratis, the Abraham Accord or the Abraham surrender or the Zionist surrender, it's been since 1948 by these regimes. And they've been actually collaborating. The Saudis, for instance, have been collaborating with the Zionists since the 1930s, and with the British before them since 1911, 1910. Okay, so it goes back way, way, way back. So they don't believe anything you hear from any of these regimes. Look at their actions and you will see the truth and you will not be confused.
Yeah. I, there is something inside me who really wants to Israel attacking these countries to understand they're nothing when it comes to Israel and fighting Israel, and they have to be, in my opinion, they have to be grateful of what the resistance is doing to defend the region. And you don't see that happening. You don't see even I don't know if these people who are in power in these countries understand that. Do uh, they understand it? They don't talk about it, or they literally don't believe in such an argument.
Well, there's two parts. One is a lot of them are illiterate, okay, and they're what can we say? They're on drugs and alcoholic and pedophilic since their handlers make them such from the beginning of their life. That's one thing. The other is that we were just talking about Mahmoud Abbas. Mahmoud Abbas is the model of these leaders. Tomorrow, if Israel attacks Jordan, the king of Jordan will do nothing better than Mahmoud Abbas. He will actually watch his country be taken over and cry here or there in front of the UN or that, but collaborate behind the scene as long as they give him his salary. You know, the Saud king in the early 1900s and the king of the Hashemites were receiving direct salaries from the British, actually their intelligence office in India, okay, in the East India Company. And there's letters of these kings complaining that their salary is not enough. I've got now more wives and more kids. Send me more money. That are in the archives for people to look at them if they want to. So yes, if the Israelis occupy Saudi Arabia, it will be the same thing. Actually, they will not care. They will not fight. They will pretend that they are too weak to fight and cry here and cry there, as long as they are kept in power uselessly, like Mahmoud Abbas, as long as the money for their drugs and alcohol and the women keep on being flown from Ukraine and Latvia for their own Epstein Islands that they have, okay, this all is good for them. They don't care about their own people. They never cared about their people. They don't care even to be better themselves. They think that they have reached the maximum that is reachable under these imperialist realities that they live. So no, they will. They know that their fate is like Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank. Even though he kissed the hand, did everything that is expected of him, there's now a plan to disarm his security forces. He's besieged in Ramallah. He can't go to fly to outside the West Bank because the master said you can't move anymore. And he's seeing the land being looted. Well, as long as the salaries are going to his kids in Montreal, the money of the Palestinian Authority is still going to his son in Montreal and his other son in Paris, he's happy. He's actually at his end of his life. He's like 90 years old. He doesn't care what happens to Palestine as long as the money is looted. And this is the same for all of these king and royals in the Arabic world, even Egypt itself. Sisi will sell. Look, Sisi sold islands, the most strategic islands of Egypt, at the mouth of the Aqaba Gulf, connected, that are situated between the tip of the Sinai Peninsula and Saudi Arabia. That basically Nasser, Jamal Abdel Nasser, fought for to liberate them and use them to blockade the Israelis and the Eilat port in the good days. They sold them without discussing with the people, without bringing it to the parliament. They sold them to the Saudis. So the Saudis helped now the Israelis to have a base there at the mouth of the Aqaba Gulf. Such a strategic point. So yes, Sisi will sell his own country if the Israelis tell him to do so.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Laith. I know that you're so tired today. You worked a lot. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Nima, and hopefully we'll see you next week. And I appreciate all the time you give me.
Yeah, see you soon. Bye bye.